We're here today to kind of have a conversation and a goal because we want to figure out what needs to be put in place for emergency care first responders to be in contact with people with disabilities. So that includes the police, but other people who might come in emergency situations. What if there's a fire? Fire department. Yeah, the fire department addresses fire, right? Yes. But this building, for example, is a universally green design building, right? And there are a lot of people with different types of disabilities within this building. So if it was a fire and the firemen didn't have knowledge of who was in the building, do you think we would all get out safely? No. What about in situations where we're in community with each other and something breaks out and the police shows up? With us, within that situation, all of us. And they wanted to figure out how to calm the situation down. What if I had a disability where calm just didn't work for me? Like I'm gonna be moving around, be doing all type of different things, and to them that poses a harm. But to me, that's just my natural way of reaction. If they didn't respond, if they didn't know, how would they respond?
Badly.
Badly, like what?
They'll treat you like a threat.
They'll treat me like it's bad. Will I make it out of that situation safely? What you say, Jasmine?
Violence!
Exactly. And so we're here today to kind of have a conversation with Miss Powell, right?
That's fine.
To figure out what would be best to be put into a bill that addresses disability and emergency first care responders. So I'm gonna let Curtis and Chris will be our master of ceremony. And so give them a hand. You're going first?
Yeah, I'll go first. Hello, my name is Chris Watts. How you doing? I'm the cousin of Stephon Watts. As you know here, this is my cousin. And we're here to talk about police brutalities and violence towards people who have been stopped by the police. And Stephon was a very good kid, even though we weren't even close, nothing like that. We didn't get
It's Stephon's brother,
as
Stephen Watts.
almost Stephon's brother.
Stephen Watts.
Her husband is my cousin as well. That's on my mom's side of the family. And I didn't even know that he's my cousin until now. And I know they had his funeral. I didn't know none of that until now.
So why is this issue important?
The issue is important to me is that it don't happen to other people like it happened to Stephon. And we are trying to keep police for stopping us for doing things that we're not supposed to be doing. You see what I'm saying? And it kind of like feel like important is it don't happen to anything nobody else like it happened to Stephon because he didn't deserve that. He never did nothing to nobody, and they just stopped him for no reason.
Thank you, Chris.
Hello, my name is Curtis Harris. I'm a disability rights activist and volunteer here for Assets Living. We're here today, like Chris was saying, talk about violence against police, or police imparting violence towards us. Because what happened to Stephon could have happened to me too. It could have happened to anybody with autism or mental illness.
Because you have autism. You have autism.
Yes.
too.
So Stephon did not have to die because he had no weapons. I know the Cook County Police did the same thing what later happened in Ferguson, in New York, of no indictment to the officers, and they got away with it. We got to educate the officers and not let them get away with this. Just like some of you may see me throw my hands up, impersonating in front of Ferguson police, or you may see me put my hand on my throat and say I can't breathe. So we're here to address all of that. And Black Lives Matter.
Hi, as everybody know, that I'm the mother of Stephon Edward Watts. His brother Stephen Edward Watts is also here. Stephon was 15 when he was brutally murdered in our home. Stephen at the time was only 16. We're here to get everyone info and what is important in putting into a bill for first responders, which is fire, police, and paramedic. But excuse me, before I go a little bit further, is there anybody here that do not know what happened to Stephon Edward Watts? Tell the story?
Yeah.
Okay, that's why I draw the breath. Okay, February 1st, 2012. But prior to that, Calumet City police officers is aware of Stephon's disability. I've also found out after they murdered him by the two cops that killed him. The one that put the bullet in his back while he was on his hands and knees and kill him instantly when he pierced his lungs with that 9mm. William Coffey. Out of his mouth, during his deposition, he stated to me that my house is coded with, I think it's a 1038 code, and what that means, any call come from my house is somebody with a mental disability live in my house. But prior to that dreadful day, we have always used the police to assist us put Stephon in the ambulance, which is for medical reason only. Stephon have autism, Asperger. So he's a high function one, very intelligent. And we were told we have a social worker that comes to the house once a week because Stephon do not like to leave the house, so she comes to visit with Stephon. And also his doctors, that if Stephon get agitated and you tell him to go to his quiet place and he's not hearing you, don't aggravate the situation any further. Have the police assist you, put him in the ambulance. That's the only reason why Calumet City police officers and their department know Stephon Edward Watts. Not because he's a criminal hanging around on the street or causing trouble in Calumet City, like the chief of police went in the news February 1st and introduced Stephon Edward Watts to the whole world when he criminalized my son, that Calumet City Police is familiar with Stephon Edward Watts and that they have 10 times dealing with him. Never stated the reason why, and never stated that it was a medical reason only why they have dealing with Stephon, why they were familiar with Stephon. But he also lied that they have 10 times dealing with Stephon, which is not true. They have physically seen Stephon 3 times, actually 4 times. They have seen him 3 times prior to the day they murdered him. The 4th time they have access to him, they murder him. There are several times that we have called because he needs to get back to the hospital, and even him and his brother Stephen fight and he'll call the police. His dad, Stephen Edward Watts Sr., always said to me, Donna, stop calling, they call me Donna as my pet name. Donna, stop calling Calumet City police officers. They're gonna murder Stephon one day. I said to him, no, Stephen, they are trained professionals and they will not hurt him. And the reason why I say that, because they know him, that he have a disability. So I never thought they would have hurt my child, more or less murdered him. So he and his brother, Wayne Watts, always said to me, you're not from this country, you don't understand. And I used to work for Dalton Police Station across town from Calumet City, the neighboring town. And I do have a lot of friends who are police officers and first responders. I have my own 2 brothers. who were police officers, and also nieces and nephew who's in the Air Force, the Marine, and the Navy. 3 of them was trained right up here in Illinois from Florida. But nevertheless, that fateful day when they came to the house, Stephon was in the basement. He and his dad was tussling over the computer. He loved computer. And his dad was shocked to see that Stephon he said he was shocked to see Stephon pulling the computer from him. So he's gonna teach him a lesson. He had never called the police before. That was the very first time he did. And when he did, he said he realized what he did was wrong. He should have never called in. He told the lady on the dispatcher on the phone that it's okay, he's calm now and he can deal with it. There's no problem. The dispatcher stated, he said the dispatcher told him that because you missed the Watts call, we have to come to see that you're okay. And the police are at your door. He went to the door and he informed them that he's okay. He met them there, he's okay, and everything. He thought that would have solved everything. Anyway, those police followed him straight into the house. He told them to leave, which I'm telling you that because they even said it in their deposition, that the dad told them to leave, and that they came inside. Even though the dad told them to leave, they wouldn't leave. They demand to see Stephon, and Stephen tell them that Stephon have left out through the back door because he did tell Stephon to leave. But then he said to himself, his mind started playing trick on him. What if Stephon really did leave? So he warned them again that he have autism. And they call out over the radio his description, but they still wouldn't leave. And to get them to leave, Stephen and Stephon, normally they're downstairs in the basement, you call them, they very seldom answer. This fateful day, Stephon said, I'm here, Dad. And he realized that he was busted. He told them, just one of you can see him because he knows that Stephon is afraid of them. And in their deposition, William Coffey looked at me in my face and said, Stephen told them, just one of you can see him. And they all follow him anyway, even though he said just one. Unbeknownst to him, he did not know that they were there. He went and talked to his son, his baby, our precious baby, his best friend, as he called him, because Stephon don't go anywhere, and his dad was homesick. He had stomach cancer, and he was homesick every day with Stephon. I'm at work, or Stephen at school, Stephen Jr. at school, so it's always him and Stephon. I work night shift, it's always him and Stephon. And he always come home, even if he go anywhere in the daytime. He said before nightfall, he know he have to come home to be with his baby. He always faithfully come home to his best friend. He and his best friend always have conversation about anything to do with the computer. Stephon don't even watch TV. The only thing he will watch is a history channel with his dad, that's it. There's nothing in TV he have any interest in. And that day, William Coffey, Robert Eineck, shot him in his chest while they stand up at my back door, the foot of the top of the basement back door, shooting down, shot Stephon in his chest. He was standing right there, his dad, they could have killed his dad too, over a butter knife that he used to unlock the bedroom door, his dad's room in the basement, to get the computer, because his dad put the computer in there. And Stephon and Stephen, right there. When we locked the doors, that's what they always used to open the door, a butter knife, a table knife that you used to eat with. Not a sharp-edged knife, just a simple table knife. And one man said, one of the officers said, knife. Robert Eineck shot him in his back, in his chest, and Stephon went down. And while he was on all fours, hands and his knees, William Coffey finished him with a bullet in his back, killing him instantly. while his dad stand and watch and look. And all Stephon said he can still see until this day is Stephon's eyes rolling over in his head. And the smoke coming from the gun, he showed me how they shot my baby. Hands stretched forward, he said, and shot and killed Stephon with no remorse at all. Because I sit in the deposition, and when my attorney asks about how they know Stephon, less than 11 months before they murdered him, they were at my house. Because Stephon and Stephon was fighting, and he called Stephon Jr. He called the police. And when the police came, they kicked everybody out of the house, surrounded the house because Stephon heard the police is coming and hide in the bathroom. Hide in the bathroom with a knife. People with autism, they grab the first object they see. But he was in no danger to anyone. He wasn't a danger to anyone. And they kicked and do everything to get him out, and they didn't. They called for someone to come and talk to him, which he don't even understand what they're saying. And a 14-year-old young man, the only thing that let him open the door, when they asked what kind of show he liked, movies, there was none. My daughter let them know he liked Warcraft, and which one. And the man knew about Warcraft, and he went back and talked to Stephon, and that's how he opened the door. And those two killers was at my house that day. So they knew that Stephon had autism. They stated in their deposition, the dispatcher told them he had autism. Their computer monitor told him that they have autism. He have autism. February 1st. Included an officer told him, that's that kid that pulled a knife out on us December 10th. And they came in my house with a 9mm. And I have no doubt they came in to kill Stephon. Because less than 2 weeks before that, they were at my house for the December 10th incident, 6 weeks after it happened. And they wanted to arrest my son. And his dad and Junior just came home and saw the thing. And he insists that, no, he will not let them in. And before the officer leave, he said, based on this report that I read, I'm surprised they didn't shot him December 10th. And his brother and sister, when Stephon called and tell them, said, we need to move, Stephon. You need to move your son. They're going to kill Stephon. And that was the very first time I got it, that they're going to kill Stephon, the very first time. So we're here trying to get info from everybody regarding how can we formulate a bill. So first responders, which is fire, police, and paramedic, they're not just police. And police and fire and paramedic, they're not all bad people. There are some bad ones among the group, not all. But even these bad ones with proper training, implement throughout the system, and they do things like what they do, they will not get away with it if we formulate a very good bill. Because with everything that's going on with disability and the Disability Act of America, first responders are not following it. What happened to good old-fashioned police training? Why is it the first thing that they are willing to do is shooting? And it's most of the time is with deadly consequences. So we're trying, I would like help in trying to figure out a way that we can have a bill for them to have training because there's none in the whole United States that is mandatory for them to do. They do it at their leisure or because they want to, not because they have to. We need to have something where it's a must that they take this training, and in doing so, they do not get away with a slap on the wrist anymore. So please, I'm asking for everyone's help. Sorry. So everybody, please. This bill is for the disability community. We have to speak out. And whatever we all do, we all will reap the benefit from it. If this bill saves one life, then my son's blood won't be in vain. I want it to save every life. But if it saves one, it's worth it.
That's good. Oh, can people hear me okay? All right, cool. Thank you. First, I want to say thank you for sort of sharing your story and sharing with the room your story, and thanks everyone for listening and sort of like take a breath right now. But at this, can people hear? Can you not? Okay, that's much better. Thank you. So I think the first thing we want to do is kind of open it up to see if people have just sort of initial questions or comments after sort of hearing these folks speak, and what are we thinking, right, as a community, like kind of what's coming to mind, and what, just sort of where are you all at right now?
Excuse me, my name is Rodney Cassell.
Wait. Just for accessible needs and because of filming, I just want to make sure everyone uses a mic. But Felani's gonna run, so if you want to say something, please raise your hand, so that she can recognize you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rodney Cassell. My disability is seizures. I have grandma seizures, fighting seizures. I understand where she's coming from, and it is wrong. We have to find some kind of way. Everybody have a different disability, and we have to find some kind of way where we can have, okay, like I have grandma seizures, so they would probably think I'm just having a seizure. But if they touch me, I'm gonna fight. Someone might turn you on the side or whatever, but if I start shaking a little far, fast or whatever, I'm gonna fight. And then they might think I'm having some type of violence toward them or whatever, and then they might end up doing the same thing to me. Yes, it's true. We have to find some kind of way of, letting them know that we are people as well as they are, and though our disability, we're not disabled, but we are strong people with strong mind. And if you can take care of somebody that falls in the streets or whatever and take them to the hospital, they should understand if they see us going through any type of situation like that, they should even call the ambulance or something like that, instead of taking it upon themselves to try to, control us. Because we don't really know the things that we go through in our times when it happens. Because I don't even know when I be having my seizures. And thank God I constantly take my medication every day. That's why I'm like I am now, because I even had a stroke. I could fall and have another stroke. But they wouldn't even know what to do. They wouldn't know it's a stroke. I have a lot of disability, but by the grace of God, I've been strong and He's been keeping me here. And I have been fighting. Yes, I have. And I have put a lot of stuff on Facebook too. And I'm gonna keep on doing it, even for Stephon. I'm gonna keep on doing it. That's why I'm here today, to help fight for all our rights. For whatever it has to be, even Ron, whatever his name is. I'm fighting because this is something that we need. They have to understand we are people, we are human beings.
Yes.
Thank you.
What's the solution?
Okay, my solution is, as I said, they ought to be able to, okay, like if I have a seizure or something, control the area, ask for M&M, ask family or friends, they know this person and with the situation they going through, and try to get some documentation on what our disability is, and they would try to, you know, work with us. You know, that's about all I can say because I never know what's gonna happen. You know, that's about it. Thank you.
I acquired my disability 5 years ago, and now that I'm at the stages of coming out of school and looking for a job, I work for the Park District, and I know they have people who specialize in training us in how to handle children with disabilities or anything of that nature, and I've been asked to actually work in the position. So I know they have people who can actually help with training if they did decide to create a training. So I think that would be one solution.
Is it effective?
Not for me, because
Or I mean, like do you want to say something about the trainings and what, like their efficacy?
the training is just, us going to orientation, and then someone comes on the mic and says, person first language and little things like that. But I think it would be more powerful if someone with a disability was actually in that position, but that's another story.
No, that's a story that should be told.
That's a very.
Well, and that's why I was asked, because I was asked what I was gonna do after I received my degree in December, and I was saying I didn't know, and then my supervisor told me that that would be something that she'd want me to apply for. So I think getting more people with disabilities involved in the training, so that, we know what we know about our circumstance, and having that input is very helpful.
So, thank you for all the work that you've done. I've been around a lot of the events this year, and every time I've seen you, it's been incredible. But the question that I have, and please don't let this sound like a lack of support, because I want to support the best way that I can. But I kind of come from a background that's more invested in prison abolition and disempowering the police and not giving them money, because the money that they get comes out of the pocket of all of our programs. Like runners slashes aren't hitting the cops. And so my question is, like, I get that people getting body cameras is like meaningful reform. It's a tangible first step. And CIT, I understand it's a tangible step. It is a meaningful piece of reform. But on the one hand, it just means that people are going to be calling 911 more often, and people with guns are going to be showing up. Whether they have the training or not, that doesn't make me feel more safe. Like, what are the strategic goals for trying to create, a climate where the cops aren't the ones where the problem for me is that you were told to call the cops. Yeah. I think that's ridiculous. Like, the cops should not be involved in this. They're not the proper intervention mechanism. And they certainly don't have the procedure, because even if they get the training, it sounds like they don't have procedure wrapped around what occurred, and they don't have planning in place for these kind of situations. And like, for me, every dollar spent on cops, there should be like $10 going to the community, like actual community supports that you can reach out to, that provide what we need. And so I don't want to like step on the idea of CIT training. I've heard some statistics that it's not effective. That there are statistics out of Albuquerque, if I recall correctly, that say that it's just not a terribly meaningful step or reform, and that the money you know, to a certain extent, like, wasted. And so I'd like to know more about like a strategic idea of how to invest in the community, even if we invest in cops too.
Okay, what you said, many of the things that you said. Oh, sorry. A lot of what you just said, and one thing you touched on, if they get training, you don't see where it make any different. Officer William Coffey and Robert Einig, those are the two that kills my son. Sadly to say, that very same day, the chief announced that those two officers have training to deal with people with autism. And it's sad to say, not once, when they come to my house, any of that was displayed, that anybody and that police force have training to deal with people with any disability whatsoever, including autism. This training that we're all a part of here trying to implement is not just for police. First responders are fire, paramedic, and police officers. Paramedic also involved with our disability community because they have to know how to talk and relate to that individual who is going through a crisis. As you said, when you're going through crisis, you don't know what to do. When an individual with a disability is going through crisis, they're unaware of whatever they do and not responsible for what they do because they have a mental or a physical disability. And for the training that I'm trying to seek out for us to get for the community at large, and this will not help just disability. If an individual gets proper training to deal with people with disability, whether it's physical or mental, that same good training that they receive will also branch out to every aspect of the community that they serve. Because once you're grounded in that way in the training, you tend to utilize it in other incidents. For example, somebody's going through a crisis. A police officer or a first responder need to know how to talk to that person, to bring that person out of their crisis. They do not understand when they're going through their crisis, a direct command from a police officer to put your hand down, drop your weapon, because they call it, even if you have a pen, they call it a weapon. So they need to learn how to talk to that individual. My son that have autism, we could say a whole sentence to a person with autism, and some of the time they may hear or understand just one out of the whole thing that you said. So if you have somebody who is trained properly, that individual would know that that person will know how to identify certain critical moment the person is going through and how to relate and deal with it. And not because the person have a knife or even a gun, you're a police officer, for heaven's sake. You're trained to disarm even that in your good old proper professional training that you get. You're trained to disarm that. So if somebody have a knife or even a screwdriver, because there's so many incidents of mental disability that have been killed over a screwdriver and over a simple knife, not a machete, but a little butter knife. They have to be trained, and they need to be trained to know how to respond and to let that person reach that individual. And it's not just police, but we always have police, always police first. So therefore, they need the training more so than others because they are the first responders that always, if it's a fire, majority of the time police come first. Because when you're down 911, who do you get first? Do you get a paramedic? Do you get a fire department? No, you get the police department. So they are the first line of first responders that everybody have interaction with. For a person with autism, which those two cops stated that they do understand when my attorney asked, do you know that even the siren, a person with autism, their sensory have an issue with it? Do you know that even your uniform, they have issue because they do have a sensory issue with it? And every answer was yes. And they did what they did. So we need to have them trained, and to me, receiving the proper training, they cannot get away with a slap on the wrist anymore as justifiable homicide. Because if you have the training, why don't you utilize it? Why is it when a person that going through a crisis, that the first responders, which is mostly police officers, don't recognize that, and even when they are told that the person is going through a crisis? For example, January 4th, 2010, there was a young man from Chicago, a 32-year-old young man. He had bipolar. I don't know how he ended up in Chicago, in Calumet City. But he went to several buildings and tell the people that he need to call for an ambulance because he's off his meds and he need help. He left. Someone called the Calumet City Police Department. Several times people called. You can read the report. It's online. And that's how my daughter found out about it after my son was murdered and informed me about it. And in the report, it stated that many people call about this man. He's off his med, he's bipolar, and he needs help. About 45 minutes later, they sent a lone female officer for a person who is bipolar and is off his med. He knocked that police officer out. Another officer came, he had no weapon. He knocked the person out. They show up and shooting him, killing him instantly. And he have no weapon. They didn't even tase him, which sometimes there's people with different issues, that's the wrong thing to do. But they didn't even do that. Their first choice is always shoot first and ask no question. Just lie about it.
Can I ask you a clarifying question? Sorry, this is just to ask a clarifying question. To kind of step it back to kind of like an also, like in addition to the training, are there other steps that, a month prior, a year prior,
For them to
other resources other than the police that didn't exist, but that you can imagine existing that would have been more accommodating of helping the situation, like rather than reaching out to cops or even the rest of the first responders, is there some kind of community organization that you can imagine or a support network?
We don't have that.
So I want to follow up on that, actually.
Not in Calumet City, we don't have that.
So, I'm glad you shared a story about someone else with a different type of disability, similar,
Incident?
and then we'll come to you. Similar situation, and then your question about what kind of community supports could be available. So, I don't know if folks heard, but yesterday or the day before, it was announced that C4, which is a community mental health center, is closing its doors. It's going to be closing its doors. So what this means is a lot of folks who are poor on Medicaid, a lot of communities of color they're not going to have a place to receive mental health services. And so this is going to, send a lot more people to emergency rooms or needing to call first responders. And these are all going to be people with different mental health disabilities, right? So when we're talking about a bill and legislation, that's something that takes a lot of time, right? It's like, this might not be something that we can even bring to legislators until maybe the fall, right? So what we kind of want to think about, and following up on your question, is what are some things in the more immediate future that we can be thinking about as sort of like your question, what might have been good, what is going to be good in the future for preventing this? What community supports, now that even more are being taken away, what can we kind of build and create, even as more is being taken away? And I want to get to this person on the floor.
No, it's all good. Can anyone hear me?
Yeah.
All right, glad to know everyone. My name is Timotheus Gordon, and I have autism as well. And I guess my first part is going to be like an observation, and the second one's going to be a question. But the first thing I keep realizing as I read a lot of cases like this and hear about the cases like this, and I keep thinking of the fact that it's a lot of shootings going on in Chicago involving police officers and gang members, or maybe police officers and people who look like gang members but really not. And I was wondering if, I wonder if the police are in the culture now where they worry so much about the description of the person that they just shoot, like mentioned earlier, they just shoot and ask no questions, as opposed to ask, well, what gang are you in? Are you affiliated with gangs? Do you have a disability? But ask questions first before just taking action. And the second thing, actually, I think mine's about to be more a suggestion for the bill. I think that training for handling people with disabilities should be mandatory, even from the college level. And from my understanding, you get your certificate in first aid response or even EMTs from universities, and also assume that you get to become an officer through the academies or whatever. And I'm assuming that they teach you how to handle different situations. I was wondering if in the bill it could be added where they are required to learn techniques on how to handle not just people with disabilities across the board, but how to handle people with autism, how to handle people with pretty much any situation dealing with disabilities. That way, they'll be better prepared. I understand the criticism will be, well, it's going to be too much. It may be too much for you to understand. How we going to have the money? If we could spend a lot of money putting police on the streets to protect us from quote-unquote gang members, I'm sure we have enough money to add to training, how to add into training how to actually help people with disabilities in crisis. That way it won't have to end in death.
That's good.
We can answer this, and one is that could have been me getting killed by the police. It can happen to anybody.
So, thinking about it that way, what is something that you feel like if people knew about disability in general, and then autism specifically, since you were speaking personally, what is something that would be good if people knew, and what is a way to get people to know that for everybody? Yeah.
Yes, I was thinking when he was talking about, and then something else came to my attention. The young girl that died of the cancer, you know, they threw a sign up there with her name on it. But you know, when you had to park in a grocery store or whatever, we had that special sign on the ground and stuff, you know, and when you want to park, you have to have that up over your window of your car. So why is it that they cannot, well, people who home have a disability could have something like probably stuck in the window or the doorway or something like that. Therefore, we'd probably be more protected in that way of knowing, or somebody would know something about us and would take cautious, you know, even the police.
I can answer
Possibly.
that. I can answer that. As I said to you, said before, my house is coded unbeknownst to us. That any call that comes from my house, it automatically tell them on the computer screen that somebody with a mental disability live in my house. And yet still they come in my house, the house that Stephon lives in, the house that few people on the block know Stephon. They know his brother Stephen, but they don't know Stephon because he do not go outside. The house is where he feels safe more than anywhere else. And yet still they come in and kill him. Yet still they came in and hunt him down and kill him. First responders, when they first came there, back to the 20th of March 2011, they finally brought in somebody professional to talk to him, to open the door. These people know that Stephon have autism and know that he like to use a knife. He don't use it on anybody, but he have a knife. Therefore, if they feel threatened, their job was to do what they did before, have a professional come in the house, but it wasn't that kind of problem because everything was calm. I was in the room sleeping. I did not even hear the police them in my house. I didn't even hear Stephon and his dad having any problem. As he said, he was shocked. And because everybody always, including the doctor and the social worker, tell him that he shields Stephon. And rightfully so. He have all right to shield his baby. He knew what the outcome could be. I didn't. I found that out late, January 19, 18, I found that out. When I realized there's no way I could ever call them again because they're gonna murder Stephon. And he knew that. He knew that. And they did what they did. And they knew of his disability. And if they feel any threat at all, they shouldn't have did what come even with people with autism, and they claim they have training. One thing I saw and read a lot in the training, you cannot aggravate the situation by surrounding the person. You will let that person feel threatened and they end up in a crisis situation. So therefore, they are aware of that, and they know that. So we have to have some real deep training for these officers, and I like what you said, and I do agree with it even before today. They need to get that in college. They need to get that as a training that if they do not pass it, they cannot be a first responder, because that's a requirement for them to be a first responder, to learn to deal with people with crisis, because you are serving the public. Even a normal person like me can end up in crisis. And they have to learn how to identify certain disorder, certain disability.
So one of the things you brought up, Brittany, was that a lot of the training, or at the Park District or something, it's a panel like this, and it's people talking about what disability is, and maybe you don't really leave having learned something useful. And so since we know a lot of the stories, we see how things happen, we see how things end in death. What can you envision a training, whether it's for community, whether it's for cops, what would training look like that isn't just a panel discussion? Like what do we think would be useful? D'Amica.
Well, I was just gonna wrap everything up kinda in a shortened version of what I was thinking about so far. And it's not that I don't learn anything, and it's just that I know what I know because of my disability. And I think the most important thing that people learn in that training would be like person first language, and that's very important. And then also the fact that it should be a requirement in school, and even like an additional workshop for the class or whatever, that could be implemented. And then Matthew would feel safe that, yes, these officers have graduated from their academy, and I feel safe and know that they are equipped to handle, so I feel safe calling. So I feel like
But,
a layered thing would kind of work.
but the two responding officers also had that training, they also graduated.
Right, but I mean, as far as something additional, like a workshop, additional few workshops.
What if,
Did
So,
you say, you
one of
feel
the
safe calling them? I felt safe calling them, and
I was speaking specifically for his, he was just saying that he didn't feel safe, like, calling the police, because they're just gonna show up with a gun and make a situation worse than it does really need to be. So I was just speaking specifically to his case.
D'Amica, okay.
Tamika and then Ryan.
Hi, my name is D'Amica. I feel like parents with, parents with disability, I feel like they need to be trained too. I feel like parents that have a child with a disability need to be trained too.
Can you say a little more about what, why and what that
Because if you got a child, let's say, if you got a child with a child that act out all the time, and you always screaming at that, and you always screaming at that child. You should be more calm than your child and ask your child what's wrong. Why are you acting out? What's the reason for this? Cause it starts at home too.
And so what if, that child isn't able to maybe say why they're acting out or communicate that to their parent?
Well, I feel like the parents supposed to know.
Melinda, you come back.
Okay. As a parent of a 2-year-old who really can't communicate too much well right now, where he should be talking and everything like that, and he is involved in early intervention. As a mother, I mean, speaking on what you said, D'Amica, you know, and having my 12-year-old as well, and him not being able to verbally communicate as well because of his speech, I go by body language and facial expressions.
Yes.
So I'm pretty good at communicating with my 12-year-old. I'm still learning my 2-year-old right now. But, you know, I go off body language and facial expressions. So, I mean, I think I know my child, but, you know, all situations are not the same. So.
I agree with what you said, with parents should get training. Tell you what, we did get training. Before he got the study to the hospital, we had to take a 6-week training to understand what is autism and how to deal with autism, with him with autism. But autism is also a behavior that it mimics several disabilities. And even you, the parents, at times, if you don't stop and think that this is what's going on with the child, sometimes, actually, when you stop and think, that's why we had to stop and think when Stephon is behaving in his way, because the more you talk to him, he'll get more agitated. So you're best not to talk to him or say too much to him because of his disability. And if he's going through a crisis, there's not too much you can do or say to him, and especially if they're off their meds, you do need professional help. Like, as you said, there should be another crisis prevention that we should use or should have, but we don't have it. And that's why we were told to have the police assist us, put him in the ambulance. No more, no less. That's all their job was supposed to be. That's all they have done for us in the past. Put him in the ambulance, and that's it. We never deal with them again, only to come and help us put him in the ambulance.
Hi, thank you. I'm just to go off of what Matt was saying too. When we talk about these people as first responders, to be clear, are there other people that would come later? Are there second responders? If not, I feel like it doesn't explain what they do. I mean, and you know, I think part of the current training that first responders receive when they're police is to solve a problem, right? And unfortunately, there are some really terrible ways to, quote unquote, solve the problem. And maybe seeing it as a problem is the issue to begin with.
So that's why we need them to have training in how to solve the problem. Because they're supposed to help us with someone with a disability. They're supposed to give them training to teach them how to communicate verbally with a person with that disability. Help the person into the ambulance, which they have always done, put him in handcuff and put him in the ambulance. That way, you know he's secure. And he get transported to the hospital 9 times out of 10, but actually 10 times out of 10. By the time he get to the hospital, he's out of the crisis. So he's able to get, from then we take it further where he go in and to be admitted in the hospital. But once they're in the crisis right there, we need them to understand how to talk to that person, how to help them. Even with fire, for example, if somebody's in a fire who have autism, if the fireman don't know how to talk to that person to come out of the fire, that person's gonna end up losing their life, the person with a disability, because he don't understand how to communicate with the person that have the disability. Because seeing the fire, it is a lot for them to deal with. And if the fireman don't know how to talk to that individual, he will die.
Okay, I just want to say a couple of things, and also to add a layer to this conversation. One, I think this issue is bigger than the law. I think it's a societal, social issue. I think because we live in a society that doesn't embrace diversity, we're not in community with things that look different. We're all different people. And I think the way that our institutions are set up, whether it's education, healthcare, you know, all the things that we quote unquote need to live life, it's not set up to embrace diversity. And so it trickled into our community to not be able to support and accept each other. And I think before we even get to a policy or a law, we should learn how to be in community with each other and to support one another. Also, just time check. I don't want to go over people's time. It is 2:11. And I don't know if you've seen that nice man at the front desk, Officer Lewis. Did you guys see him? Guess what he does? He trains in the very thing that we're talking about, which is it community intervention training? Yeah. And he said that if we want to go down, because he can't leave the desk, he works here. If we want to go and have a conversation with him, like ask him questions about the trainings in police and what they do, we can do that. And so if you guys want to do that, what we could do is take this conversation to the lobby and include a person who sees it from the police side. Not saying that we want to accept everything, but that maybe we should hear from all sides. So we're hearing from the people. In the future, we're going to hear from the legislators. Why don't we hear from the police that get the training? Because I think a lot of this is that police are trained a certain way to respond to a crisis. And they're not trained to ask questions first. And so what should be put into this policy to deal with that first. So maybe we should talk to him about that. So by show of hands, who wants to include Officer Lewis in this conversation?
I'm all for it.
Okay, so by a show of hands, are you guys willing to go downstairs and we take chairs in the lobby?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, but before, is there anybody else have any other question or anything to add to the bill before?
Yes, hand up.
Okay, so can the people, 3 people who want to speak, can y'all move to the front?
Just come right
And you have literally 30 seconds.
And Thomas didn't speak yet.
And actually, Thomas, because you are a young person, not saying nobody else is here young, we all young, but I actually would like to hear from you, Thomas. Mike Runner.
You can go first, actually. If that's fine with y'all.
Yeah, my name is Thomas Coleman, and I have a niece. She 2 years old, and she who has speech therapy, and you know, in the speech therapy, the speech teacher had to quit because you know, and you know, and let's say again. When my niece see that she talking, she can say a couple words, and with the government, the child care for my sister is the government Bush Barnum. He paying the child care too much money. The child care. Yeah.
So what you're saying is the services that your niece is getting, Bruce Warner is cutting the budget for her to get those services.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anybody else want to?
Hi, my name is Jamie. I just wanted to add something that you might want to look into putting in the bill. You said that the crisis intervention, somebody that was trained in crisis intervention was able to peacefully resolve the situation at one point. So I was wondering if it would be possible to have crisis intervention people standing by and out on the streets with the cops, so that they could be helpful in these types of situations, so that it's not only on the cops. Because I feel like the level of training that's needed to properly handle these types of situations goes way beyond what we could train cops to do in like a 6-week course. I mean, this takes years and years of study and degrees in psychology and high-level degrees in psychology. So if we could get the funding to put these crisis intervention managers on the street, I think that really has the potential to make a difference. And I think that's a really important step.
I think that would be a good backup for the police. I know the police then can get training where it don't take them 4, 5, 6 years. For a police officer, their training wouldn't be like a doctor going to get a training. Their training would be less, but it's something they have to prepare for during college and during their training.
Okay.
That would be part of their training. And they have to pass set part of that training to continue to get their, whatever they get to be a law enforcement officer. But the crisis intervention would be very important, and that should be something that we also need to push for crisis intervention, not just with the first responders, but, for example, my house that is coded that could be in crisis. Whenever a call comes from my house, there should have been also a crisis intervention person come on the scene along with the police officers.
So that was oversight.
Yeah.
So at this point, we really do want to move downstairs so we can include Officer Turner in the conversation, and we can continue these questions.
What's happening is if you call the police and get them involved in anything that you're going to do, somebody's going to get hurt. Somebody might get killed. So you don't want that. You don't want them involved in your business because a lot of them don't have sensitivity training and they don't care. They don't care. There's been too many cases in Chicago where people with mental illness were shot or beaten to death by Chicago police because they just don't care.
Do you think it can be trained?
Can they be trained?
Yeah.
Yes.
What kind of training would that require?
Well, crisis intervention is one thing, but when you're dealing with liability, the city don't want nothing to do with that. The city does not want to be involved in liability.
So they'd rather shoot?
They'd rather shoot somebody to death or hurt somebody. And that's what happens.
So do you believe then that like everyone should receive crisis intervention training, or should it be more of a volunteer
Well,
basis?
when it comes to law enforcement, it should be required. It should be mandatory. I mean, these are people with college degrees. They have no excuse for dealing with people with mental illness the wrong way. You can't deal with them hard-handed and heavy-foot. You can't do that. But they do it all the time. Case in point, Washington, D.C., a mother, postpartum. She's acting out. She's got a baby in the car. What did they do to her? They shot her to death. They shot her to death. They murdered her. Well, she was not a threat to the White House. She wasn't a threat to anybody. This woman had postpartum. But they gunned her down. And they shot the baby too.
That was last year?
Yeah, it was last year, a couple of years ago. But they shot the baby too. Now, people are jumping the fence with knives. They broke into the White House, all this kind of stuff. Did a bullet fly? No. But you shoot this woman to death in front of her child. Who's wrong?
You're a police officer?
I'm a state investigator.
State investigator. My name is Danielle
Nice to
Powell
meet you.
Dickens.
Yes, indeed.
What? And it's my son. We're trying to get this bill passed for my 15-year-old autistic baby that was murdered. Because that was
Calumet Park?
Calumet City.
Calumet Park.
Calumet City, yeah. February 1st, 2000.
They murdered your child.
Yes, they did.
They had stun gunned him. They had tased him. They had pepper sprayed him.
No, they did that 2011.
How many times did those police come to your home?
The police have come to my house several times, but they have only met Stephon 4 times. The 4th time they murdered him. There are several times Stephon leave our house because, you know, with people with autism, and especially him that don't go outside and don't know anything to communicate with other people, we're afraid. So we'll call the police, you know, to report him missing. His dad always found him. And there are several other times we'll call, and his father take off with him in his car because he always said they're gonna murder Stephon one day.
Why'd you call the police?
We call the police because we have a social worker that comes to the house once a week because Stephon don't want to leave the house to go to see the social worker, so she comes to him. And also his doctor.
Go ahead.
Also his doctor said to us if he gets agitated, you know, into a little crisis mode, and you're talking to him, you tell him to go to his quiet place and he's not hearing you. Don't aggravate him any further. Have the police assist you, put him in the ambulance.
No.
That's the only reason why they know him.
No.
I did not know.
No. Stay away from
His
the
dad
police.
always tell me that
Yeah.
because he also said to me, and even his brother Wayne said to me, you're not from this country, you don't understand. And because I used to work for Dalton Police Station, and I have friends and my brothers in who's police and police captain, you name it, nieces and nephew in the Air Force and the Army, Navy, I trusted them. I trusted them. And after what happened December 10th, And an investigator called me that morning and wanted to talk to me about my son, Stephen Watts. I get excited. I was sleeping. I was working night shift. I work at Ford. I build those police. I build those police cars. I inspect it. I work in the paint department. I inspect the cars when they come out of the oven for defect. And I'm with those people. I work for them too.
And you murdered your child.
I come home from work that morning. I have conversation with Stephon in my office on the computer. And we discuss going to Jamaica, because he loved Jamaica. I call it his home. And I fill out his passport and his brother Stephen passport form. Everything was done in his passport. Stephen's passport didn't have his social security written in it, but Stephon's one was written in his. Everything was done. I said, Friday I'll go take your picture so that I can send off for your passport form, for your passport.
Let me stop you right there. Everybody, I want you all to look at me. What happens when I do this? What happens? When I do this? I pull my badge out. What happens when I do this?
You're asserting your dominance.
I'm not asserting anything. I'm just showing you my level of authority. But how has this treated you? How has this treated you? How has this treated you? That's the issue. The mental health issue in Illinois is abominable because they don't care.
They don't care, they don't acknowledge it, and they don't, because one thing you need to know, my house was coded, and I didn't know till they said in their deposition that any call come from my house, they know that somebody with a mental disability live in my house.
That was just bad, and totally unnecessary. And you should have sued them for everything that you could because they were wrong. Your child had a butter knife trying to get into a cabinet, and you pull a gun and you shoot him.
They stand up at the back door. One officer, William Coffey, Robert shot him in his chest first. And he went down at the foot of the basement stairs, standing there with his dad. And it's all four. William Coffey shot him in his back, piercing his lungs, killing him instantly. And our state attorney and the state police call it justifiable. The Indiana coroner ruled it a homicide, and they call it justifiable homicide.
Justifiable homicide to shoot somebody to death because they have a butter
They
knife?
got a butter knife, and because and shot him in his back.
What is a baton for?
So, thank you. What? And they put
What
the
is a
top of the
baton
stairs.
for? What is this for?
What about your foot? That's the strongest weapon you have. And
What about
he's at
this?
the foot of the basement stairs.
What about this? If he's attacking you and he comes close enough, then you touch him up. You can do that.
Is that a taser, Louis?
No,
What is that?
that's a stun gun. Tasers shoot projectiles into your body and is hooked to a wire where they fire electricity into it. This is requiring you to get up close and put your hands on someone. So you need training to carry all of this stuff. So why would you shoot someone to death with a butter knife?
Get away with it.
Well, yeah, but they got a butter
As
knife.
you know, the Cook County decided not to indict the officer.
Well, we see that all the time, Curtis.
Officer Lewis,
Yes, ma'am.
what should be placed in this bill to support officers to be trained in accessibility?
They need to be trained in crisis intervention. They need to be required to take crisis intervention. They need to be required to have it. They need to be forced to have it.
Exactly.
And they need to be reviewed on a month-to-month basis. Because when you have these confrontations with law enforcement, again, once you put yourself in that situation, it could be an irreversible situation. Somebody lost their life and yours.
My son and his dad, we all are suffering, but his dad, best friend, is gone.
Yeah, but we see the horror stories. They're not gonna change. They're not gonna bring your son
And
back.
no, but if this bill that we did, that we're working on, if it saved 1 or a million lives, then my son's blood won't be in vain.
Well, they require the police to have a college degree. Am I correct?
Yes, but you know what I read in the deposition from these two killers? I don't see a college degree. Officer William Coffey was, both of them was born and raised in Calumet City, by the way. And they now live in Crown Point, Indiana, and work in Calumet City.
Yeah, but I feel like there's a lot of people with college degrees who are, that didn't mean anything.
That's not the point.
You know what I
They're
mean?
supposed to have it.
Well, the police department dropped the ball because, number one, if you're going to be dealing with a society where you have mentally ill people who are not receiving treatment, they're not getting any help, they're locking them in cages
In
at the county jail
Yeah.
and forcing their medication on them, that's wrong.
I think it's wrong.
They haven't committed any crimes.
Majority of the people in prison today have some form of mental
Yeah,
disability.
but this thing is, what I'm saying is this, you haven't broken any laws, you're sick.
He haven't. and
You're
he
sick.
didn't.
Schizophrenia, you know, paranoia, all these
All
different
of
kinds of mental health issues,
They're in
autism,
crisis.
everything. You are going through an illness, and you're gonna gun someone down when all you have to do was put your hands up and walk away.
They didn't even have to try to go down to my basement.
They didn't have no business going
They
down
have
to your
no business
basement.
there. And even when the dad told them not to, they did
But
not.
once you called them into your house, once you called them, you opened the door to whatever they did. You opened the door.
I didn't.
No,
But
you didn't
either
have to.
way, that shouldn't have happened.
It shouldn't have
It
happened.
shouldn't have happened. When William Coffey, what I was saying with how he became a police officer, he was a grave digger.
Mm-hmm.
He worked at a cemetery before he became a police
Mm-hmm.
officer. That's his college degree.
Can I ask you a question?
Alright,
Did
wait,
they have a
wait.
warrant?
No,
Check.
his dad tell him to leave and they wouldn't leave.
Go ahead, Candace.
Okay, you guys. I appreciate the layers of conversation. It is 2:34. If you have three people, three final thoughts. I know this is like, man, this is just getting good. I know. But we have to move forward. And so, I got two hands, one more hand. Okay. This, lady right here with the pink umbrella, I haven't heard from you, right here.
Well, I was thinking that they need to have, because the police have to come with the paramedics,
Final thoughts.
because you're bringing in
They didn't come with it.
but the paramedics don't come without the police.
The paramedics are only going to show up if there's a situation where the police call them.
And the paramedics show up after my son was murdered. I begged them and
So
screamed
do
them
you
to
have to
call.
say that this person has a health problem?
They know he
Then
have-
they'll send the paramedics?
That whole problem
They still call the police.
they have control of who they're going to call and when they're going to call them and what they're going to do when they get there. Because again, the police officer's job is to restore peace by any means necessary. That's how they act.
And there was no violence.
And
going
they don't
on.
care.
And
They
didn't
do
care.
not
There
care.
Well,
was
maybe
no
you need to
violence.
say there's no violence, that this person has a
His dad
mental
told them
illness.
that everything is calm, that Stephon is calm and he can deal with it himself.
You know,
And they didn't.
I want everybody to hear
You
this.
could, wait, officer.
Go ahead.
You could, if you have personal one-on-ones, we could do that. I just wanna make sure, just as a group. And these two people have their hands up, so you go first.
Alright, if we could, I think we could have all the diversity we want, we have all the training, whether it's from the police departments, the EMTs, or even from the communities, the parents, all we want to, but I think the one thing that must be done is that everybody has to be educated on the different disabilities. It is even better if somebody who actually from those communities actually go out to the communities and places and educate them on, what it is, how to affect them. And that way people get an idea on how to handle, how to interact with them first of all, and then how to handle that person in a crisis. At least they could at least they have a better idea coming from a first person perspective how they have
Let me stop you right there.
Go ahead.
Law enforcement is the I tell you what to do business.
I understand.
They don't ask you to do anything. They tell you what to do.
I understand.
They don't care about anything except you doing what they tell you to do.
I understand.
And if you don't do it, then they're going to use whatever means necessary to make you do what they want you to do. That's what they're going to do. You're going to be a threat. Why? Because you're a big man, you got dreadlocks in your hair, and you are a threat. Because they're going to assume that you're going to fight back.
What if they tell, what if they...
Whoa, wait. I don't want to go back and forth because we got to close out.
Good. No, you got a point though.
And you can finish after we done.
I've heard some terrific ideas here today about programs that are going to be helpful.
Say who you are.
My name is Scott Holdison. I'm the Vice President of UAW Local 551.
That's my Vice President, Ford.
Donalene is my coworker.
wife.
We've had some wonderful discussions about programs that would be really helpful. And unfortunately, we do not have the political will at this time to fund those programs. We're cutting the budget. Austerity is killing our society, and it has been for a good couple, 3 decades.
Yes.
What we need to do is band our communities together, whether it be the disability community, whether it be the Black Lives Matter community, whether it be the teachers that are having their livelihoods cut out from underneath of them, whether it be the parents and students that go to those schools, where we've had 50 schools in the city closed by a mayor that's run by the corporation.
Exactly.
We have a society here today where corporations do not serve the society, society serves the corporations, and we need to change that political will before we can accomplish any of this. And that's my comments.
That's beautiful. But I want everybody to remember something. You're taxpayers.
Right.
They work for you. You're paying for the cars, the uniforms, the equipment. You're paying for it out of your pocket. They work for you. Crisis intervention training should be mandatory. Mandatory. Automatic. If it is not mandatory, then it needs to be made mandatory. Because that's the only way you're going to resolve this. Number one, sensitivity training only goes so far. But when you have a group of people who are us against the world, all the officers out there on the street, their main objective is to go home. That's it. That's been my objective for 36 years. I'm going home in the shape that I left in, by any means necessary. I'm going to do that. But there's never a time where I wanted to abuse or hurt someone unnecessarily.
Because I can.
Because I can brings about a lawsuit. Liability is what the issue is. Number one, they're going to have to pay what they did. They got to pay. And they need to be held accountable for what they did. That case is no different than the kid that was outside of his family's pizza parlor and they beat him to death. They beat him to death. But he was autistic, 13 years old. The police, come here. Yeah. And his only response was to walk away.
Right, because he don't understand.
Because he didn't understand.
Didn't understand.
So what did they do? They beat him to death. They beat him to death. In front of his family. In front of his family. You have to know the law. You have to know your rights within the law. They've taken away so many programs from our children. They don't even teach the Constitution in the high schools anymore. Nobody knows the Bill of Rights. They don't know the first 10 amendments. They don't know anything about the 4th Amendment or the 5th Amendment. They don't know anything.
That's intentional.
It's intentional because they want to dumb everybody down. But when we get together with a group that can stand and throw a punch that they're going to feel, that's how you get your results. Because it needs to be something that is mandatory. And this is the action to take. This is the action to take. This is heading in the right direction. Because until you get the right respect and the right actions, you got to keep making noise. Squeaky wheel get the grease.
Yep.
All right, well, let's get Officer Lewis again for his contribution. I really, I feel weird up here, but I appreciate everybody for coming today. I think the next step, is there anybody who wants to help with passing this bill? Or writing it?
Anybody that wants my number, my phone number is 773-902-8035. I am an instructor for the state of Illinois. You should have wrote it down on a piece of paper.
I've got it.
An ink pen and paper still works. 773-902-8035. Give me a call. My name is Officer Lewis Turner. Okay? 773-902-8035. If you have a group that you would like for me to come and speak to, or bring some of my peers with me to speak about these same issues, I would be glad to bring them. Because the politicians, they're looking at how much they're gonna have to spend. That last situation where they had to pay out $5 million to the family of a girl where this idiot pulls a gun out and shoots into a crowd. For what? You don't disperse a crowd of people with a gun?
With a gun.
You don't do that.
With even, back to the autism. Just last month, another young man with autism in Dallas, Texas, was shot and killed. He had a screwdriver.
Because they don't care.
And it's because
They don't care.
And they get away with it.
And we have to have this bill force them to care.
Exactly. And if this bill goes through in Illinois, it could be a trendsetter for
want
other
it to
parts
go
of the country.
national.
But they're gonna get into this fight. If you're gonna get into this fight, get into it all the way. You can't go halfway with it. You gotta get into it all the way. Because if you go halfway with it, then they're not gonna take you seriously. But make them hurt in the pockets.
October.
Make them feel it.
In October.
Make them feel it. Like Aretha Franklin said, give them something they can feel. You know?
I intend to.